So I decided to go back to the old school Ghost Recon, which came out in 2001. And I've got to say, I was definitely pleasantly surprised with the game. I thought I was just going to go back to it, and then once the nostalgia wore off, there wasn't going to be too much substance behind it. But I actually had a lot of fun playing it. I thought the gameplay was really good, and it was a welcome change from what I usually play, which, to be fair, I don't really get my hands on too many tactical shooters. So it's been a while since I've had that kind of slow pace, fast time to kill. And it was really satisfying, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Pumped about 20 hours into both Ghost Recon and the mission pack Desert Siege. So the big thing when going back to these old games is, do the graphics hold up? Are they too bad? Are they distracting and taking away from your enjoyment of the game? And for me, Ghost Recon, yeah, the graphics weren't great, and definitely in some areas it struggles more than others. But it didn't take away from my enjoyment. They did enough to kind of immerse me in the gameplay and creating tense environments where I didn't really care about the graphics. It also had a few things going for it. For example, you've got no 3D gun model, you've just got the crosshairs in your first person view. And I think that actually helps this game age a bit better, because you're not distracted by constantly looking at a terrible gun model. I would say that the graphics suit the original Ghost Recon, which came out in 2001, as opposed to the mission pack Desert Siege, which came out in 2002. The graphics do suit the original Ghost Recon a bit better, and I did pick up both of these games for around £7 on Steam, so £7 for the two of them. And it's just the environment which they're both set in. So the original game's set in kind of a woodland. Largely you have like urban missions as well, but it's mostly set in kind of a woodland environment, grassland, whereas Desert Siege is set obviously in the desert. And it's just the long lines of sight the graphics really struggle with, whereas on the original game you've got a lot of foliage, a lot of trees that break that up. And it also just looks a bit better in terms of the colours. Desert Siege looks very bland, as maybe you'd expect, but it just seems like the graphics can't really do anything with that. Whereas in the original game just looks more vibrant and better colours, and you get a bit more variation in environments. You get snow, rain, nighttime, daytime. So graphics wise, I think with Desert Siege I definitely noticed the age of the game more than I did with the original game. But all in all, I'd say that the graphics, they weren't distracting for me. I was still able to enjoy the gameplay, and that's pretty much, going back to these old games, that's all you really want. If you can look past the graphics, a lot of them have got a really good core fun gameplay element to them. So what do you get if you get the game? Well, I've got to say that I like picking up these old games, especially the kind of classic ones, because they're usually pretty cheap. They can run on any old shitty laptop, and there's still a lot of fun to be had with them, and Ghost Recon's no exception. You do get a nice amount of mission progression, kind of it gets harder as you go through the levels, and they do a decent job, although it's not too sophisticated. They at least try and mix up the missions and keep it varied. So you'll have some missions where you've got to blow up a submarine, and then others where you're protecting a convoy or helping a group of tanks through a certain area. So they try, although a lot of it is, not massively different, there is still a fair amount of missions which are just blowing up Object A or Object ABC. They do try and vary it up, and that is appreciated. You do have to change your approach to some of the missions. For example, you've got to keep up with the convoy, so you go a bit quicker than you would normally if you were just doing a stealthy mission, more stealth-like mission. So the mission progression and the variation is good. There is also a basic level, but a bit of character development where you just upgrade the characters you've selected for a certain mission. And it's nothing too sophisticated, but it does just tie you in with the character a bit more. And if they die on a mission, for example, then you can't use them again, so your progression is lost. And that just adds a sense of tension to the missions. You don't want to just run in there and lose someone you've worked on for the last 7 missions progressing. So it is a nice feature. There's only 4 attributes that you can upgrade, but it's a nice feature, and it gets you a bit more invested in the characters. You do also, if you do there's kind of optional objectives, and if you complete them, then you can pick up more specialist characters, which have got, the main thing is they've got different weapons, more unique weapons, and that's kind of fun to use some of those characters. I would say it does take away from the character progression though, because usually the specialists start with the level of attributes that you've progressed to for that particular level. So if you're on level 7, for example, you'll get a specialist that is that kind of level, which means you can just swap them in for someone you've been developing for a decent amount of time, and it's kind of, it gives you a feeling of, what was the point of keeping that person alive when I could have just replaced them with a specialist at this point. But it is fun, they've got more unique weapons. It would have been nice to have maybe more of a variety or more of them, but they do add something to the game. There are definitely a few noticeable things that could have been improved. For starters, it would have been nice to have more of a selection of weapons to choose from. As it stands, it's just a single character has a single primary weapon and they're linked together, and there's no changing that. You can change their kit, for example, whether they're carrying, if it's a demolition unit, whether they're carrying a rocket launcher or satchel charges. You can change that, but you just can't change the primary weapon. And it would have been nice to pick your team and then pick your primary weapons depending on the type of approach you want to take. So if you want to be silent and stealthy, you could pick silent weapons, or if you just want to go in loud, you just pick whatever you want. There's also a few items of equipment that are noticeably missing. For example, there's no flashbangs or stun grenades or anything of that ilk, and although the game is mostly based outdoors, so you wouldn't really need to use something like that, there are still some urban levels and there's still some buildings you need to clear, and without some kind of way of having a tactical approach, it just feels a bit luck of the draw. You can go in silent and hope they're not facing where you're entering and just try and shoot them first. But for a tactical shooter, you'd expect there to be something a bit more than that. So that is kind of odd they didn't have anything that could take on that role. And that leads on to the AI of the game. And the AI is not great, to be honest. It's okay, but for some of the big maps, if you shoot 1 or 2 people, all you do is you just wait in the same area and a whole section of the enemy just walk towards you slowly and just take them out. And it's a bit too easy, and it takes away the tactical approach, and there's no real way to not do this because there's not a huge selection of silenced weapons. You're stuck to SMGs and pistols for the most part. So if you want to take someone out at range, you've got to use a loud weapon, and that means you're going to get the enemies just approaching where you are, where you can just take them out pretty easily. You've also got the AI when you're entering buildings. Now I found that even if I was really loud sometimes, shooting people on the bottom floor of a building, opening doors loudly and running around, sometimes I'd enter a room and the enemy would just be facing completely the wrong way and I'd just take them out execution style, which does feel a bit ridiculous when you're doing it. And other times you get the opposite effect where you're really quiet and you're sneakily going through a house, and then you'll open one door and someone will be looking straight at you and they'll just take you out immediately. And without any kind of flashbang or stun grenade or any decent way to tackle that, really there's nothing you can do other than quick save it before entering a building and hoping that someone's not facing directly at the door you're going through. But other than that, I don't really have anything more negative to say about the game. On the whole, I did really enjoy it. I had a good time. It was a nice relaxing game to play after a long day's work. A welcome change being a tactical shooter from the games I normally play. And I would say that if you were thinking of picking it up, maybe you got an older computer or you used to play it when you were younger and you want to just go back to it, I would say it's probably worth just picking up the original game, and then if you still really want more, maybe look at some of the other mission packs, because the original game, it was bigger, the graphics suited it well, and there was more progression. So if you see it on Steam, if you're looking at it and maybe you can pick up the original game for £3-4, I would definitely recommend it. I had a lot of fun with it, put in plenty of hours. It was a nice game to play after work, and yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. So yeah, that's it from me. This is the first kind of game commentary that I'm having a go at, so hopefully it's not too bad. And let me know, please let me know in the comments below if you pick up the game, if you enjoyed it, and what your thoughts are on it as well. Alright, thanks a lot guys, see you in the next one.
Goodbye. Scratch another one. Another kill. Enemy down.